Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the built-in modeling tools in Unreal Engine to create your own static meshes directly in the engine itself. The first thing is it's actually a plugin, so you do have to enable it. So you can just hit enabled and then it'll ask you to restart, and you can restart. And then to enter into the modeling tools area, you just go up here to modes when you're in this in the level editor view, and you can just go to modeling, and there you go. You'll get these new tabs and a bunch of new functions here. And so yeah, you'll actually be modeling directly in the level editor, which is really nice because it allows you to compare things and get things to the right scale and that kind of stuff. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go through these primitives. You can just click one of these. It just gives you like a starter shape. So this is a square. In the modeling tools, there's always going to be a lot of interesting parameters here on the left that you can adjust. So for example, I could change the height numerically here, and it all changes in real time, the width and whatnot. I can add subdivisions if I want. So I'm not going to go through like everything, but just know that you can modify things here. And so yeah, so I'll drop in like a square, for example, and then of course when I'm done with it, I can actually drop more squares. I can hit complete. Another thing is I have this setting here set to current folder, and so what it's doing is it's actually creating a whole brand new static mesh here, in the current folder I'm in. So I'm actually in my art meshes folder, just for this demo. And yeah, so it actually, when I dropped that into the level, it actually created a static mesh for it. And so at this point, let's go through and look at some of these here. So like the cylinder, of course, and it gives you an example of like the different things. There's also flat type of polygons you can drop down, and so the reason that might be useful is you could like drop a flat guy down, hit complete, and then you can do things at that point like enter the poly edit mode, which we'll cover more later. And you could like click it, and you could do like an inset, and then you could like pull that up, see? And so you can actually start to essentially hit accept. You can start molding that flat shape into something. Yeah, so that's basically, you can go through more of these yourself. You can do a sphere, torus, puncture disc. They're all pretty self-explanatory. So the next tab we'll look at is the create tab. And so what we'll do there is we'll just kind of click off any other static meshes for now. And then I'll show you this polygon tool first. So the first thing to note about this polygon tool is you can control click on any surface, and then it will change that to your drawing plane. So if I wanted to like draw here, I could like control click there, and you'll see now I'm drawing like literally on the surface of this, or here, or really anywhere. Yeah, and so let's just draw it here, and let's say I wanted to draw something. So what I might do is go to actually top mode. And so I can see the plane here, and I can literally just start drawing something. And of course, I don't have to be there. I can be in perspective and start drawing as well. But sometimes it's nice to change into these different views if you want just an orthographic view. And so let's see. Sorry, my mouse is acting weird. So yeah, so I can basically on this surface, I'll just start drawing, some kind of a custom polygon shape. And if you notice, I'm in freehand mode here, and I'm in interactive extrude. So I just got to freehand draw my polygon on the surface. And now that I've closed out the polygon, I can actually extrude it. So this is just a way to create a little bit more of like a custom profile from your like starting geometry. So the other thing you can do is oh, and by the way, if you go to polygon, you can have it be a a circle shape if you want. There's some different things, and you could be a square. And yeah, you can go through some of these yourself. And you can also choose different things. So you can choose to extrude to a height, or you can just make it a flat mesh. And of course, there's some snapping options and whatnot. Yeah, so we'll just get out of that for now. And then, yeah, we'll cover the polypath. So polypath's really interesting because it just saves you some time. So I might control click there. And it's good for like creating walls, or I don't know really all the uses for it, but I've used it to create like walls and that kind of stuff. So for example, you can just start drawing like a path. And then at the end, if you want to, you can just click on the last point here, and then you can, it's interactive, so you can then, it's going to want you to essentially give that path a thickness, and then you just click once you get the right thickness, and then the final operation is you can give it like some kind of height, some kind of extrusion. And so there you go. So that's just, as you can see, you could create walls like a lot faster using that method than trying to do this in some other way. So of course, you can create ribbons, which would just be like no thickness, just like a flat shape. And then you can create ramps, which will actually give this like some kind of like angle up. Yeah, and then of course there's some other operation or some other parameters here that you can modify as well. So that's basically the polypath tool. Polyrevolve is, again, we'll just click here, is just a way to create a profile and then revolve it around this axis. So for example, if we wanted to create like a, you know, like some kind of barrel or something, we could do this. You know, maybe even like bring that concave and then just do this. And then when we click on this final one, boom, you can see it'll actually create this, it'll revolve that shape that we drew around that central axis. So you can create revolved shapes as well using the polyrevolve. And oftentimes this is how you're going to start like some kind of mesh. You know, you're going to think about like, like, you know, is this generally like a circular shape, or is this going to be more of like a wall, or is this going to be, you know, can I just start from like one of these primitives? So that's what the purpose of them are. I'm not going to cover everything. I don't really use all of these all the time. So the other thing I'll show you now, which is quite useful, I can also change how quickly I move around the viewport, are really these the Booleans. And so, for example, it just allows you to combine two shapes and then like add or subtract essentially one shape from the other. So yeah, so let's just take a look at like what that might look like. So maybe I want to take this and I just want to like, you know, maybe cut a hole out. So what I'll do is I'll select this is going to be essentially the, you know, my hole that I want to cut out from this. So I'll click this and I'll control click this. It doesn't matter which order, but as long as they're both, the two meshes are selected, now you'll get these options. So for example, like a mesh Boolean. So right now, if we look over here on the left, we have operation A minus B. So it took the first one minus the second one, and so as you can see, it just removed this, and then it obviously it was in it a bit, so it cut a hole into it. Or we could do B minus A, where it will just leave this piece, but remove the bottom of it based on where that square was. Yeah, or the intersection piece, or the union, we can actually combine. So this is really, if you had like two complex static meshes you were building separately, you could combine them into one using a union. Then of course there's like trim, which leaves like a flat piece back, and trim B. So not all of these are useful. It just depends on kind of like what you're doing. And so you could do things like, I could like rotate this, see? And it will create all sorts of interesting shapes that might be difficult to create like otherwise, right? You know? Create like a half pipe. Yeah. So anytime you're modeling, and when I hit accept, it actually creates a brand new mesh for this. So even though it removed the original, this is actually a brand new mesh that it created a new file for here. It's either this one or this one. So that's what happens. And then yeah, so that's probably about it for Booleans. And yeah, so let's take a look. So transform's useful. This transform tab, pretty much the only thing I've used it for so far is I use this edit pivot, quite often, especially if I'm bringing in a model from somewhere else and I just want to quickly move the pivot point. So this is your pivot point. So all that means is just where it's just what it rotates about, and it's where things get placed and whatnot, and where you translate from. And then sometimes you just want to take that pivot point. I can just hit edit pivot and I can literally just like move it. I can actually just hit center and it will find the center of mass of the object. I can hit bottom and it will automatically find like the bottom. So I'm kind of like centered on the bottom right now. Yeah, and then I can just hit accept, or I can just move it manually as you saw. And now look, it's like rotating on a completely different pivot point. Instead of in the center, it's rotating, at the center base. So that's really useful in case you need to modify a pivot point. What's nice is that you can do this for not only any model you create in here, but any model you bring in from anywhere can be modified using these modeling tools, which is really, really neat. So a lot of your modeling, at least basic modeling, can be done in Engine. And so let's take a look. So deform is very useful as well. So for example, like plane cut is really interesting. It just does like an infinite cut for you like this, and you can just move that around if you want to get some kind of like, complex shape like this out of it. Again, when you're building stuff, you'll start to see when you might need each of these different tools. And so that's basically all that does. It just does like an infinite cut through a thing. And then of course, if you hit accept, it'll create a whole brand new, or actually no, in this case, it will actually modify, because we're not creating. It will actually modify one of these existing models. So yeah, and so you can also take things and you can mirror them, and there's quite a few options there. Over here on the left, you can mirror and append, mirror an existing. Yeah, you can choose like the direction, like mirror up, mirror vertically, left, right, forward. Polycut. This is actually, a pretty useful tool. There's quite a bit you can do with this. Maybe we'll go over here, work on this guy. So polycut, yeah, you can cut through, trim. This is interesting. You can insert polygons onto things. So like cut through, for example, make the hole smaller. There you go. So I can just take this polygon. I have it set to a circle. I can make it a square. Or any of these other shapes. I can choose the number of divisions. So as you can see, you could do like just 3 sides to a circle is actually a triangle, and then you can just go up from there. So you can do like a square, pentagon, hexagon. I can't remember what 7 is, but you can do an octagon. 9 is a nonagon, and a decagon. Anyways, so yeah, you can basically cut through different shapes. You can change the size and the scale, of course, and it will do like a full cut all the way through that shape, all the way through. And so what's also an interesting thing is you can do insert polygon. This is quite useful. And of course, you can control click on that surface, and if you want to get it like perfectly lined up. And what I found is that the modeling tools in general are they're not accurate. Like you're not going to get things perfectly positioned all the time. So it's kind of just for like quick modeling, which for me is what I do like 99% of the time anyways. I don't need like super accurate engineering quality, accuracy on everything. So it's mostly just visual. So what this is going to do, it's actually going to insert like a polygon, onto the surface of something. And so what you can do is once you hit accept, and then if we go into like polygroups and then we edit the polygon, there we go. We've actually like cut out like a little shape. So then I can start doing like some interesting stuff with this. I can like extrude it, right? I can then like, inset it, right? And then I can like pull that up. So you can start creating like these like really interesting shapes once you kind of draw that extra polygon onto that surface. So yeah, so polycut, pretty useful. And yeah, like some of these you can try out yourself. Like there's just different things. Like they're not all so useful all the time for just basic modeling. But yeah, that's mostly what I use out of the deform section. So one of the areas you're going to use quite a lot, I think, or at least I use the most, is this new tab, Polygroups. Because this is where you really edit a lot of like the polygons. And so Unreal has like a special method where it creates these polygroups, which are essentially just groups of the triangles that actually compose a mesh. So if I click this and I go to poly edit, see if I do show wireframe, you can see actually like this object is built up of a bunch of triangles. And so polygroups are just essentially combining a bunch of triangles all into just one group. So it just makes it a lot easier to work with. And the reason I'm able to see this is because I clicked show wireframe here. So at this point, what I could do is I could just like click this polygroup, this group of triangles, and then I can do stuff with it. So I can like I can take a face and I can like drag it around. I can also select like an edge and like drag that around. I can also rotate anything that I want. So maybe like this direction. And I can do all these operations. Like I can just click on something else. I can kind of do them all at the same time before I hit accept. I can even select individual vertices and move those around. So as you can imagine, you can really start modeling and shaping things by just moving the faces and vertices and edges around. So all that's possible through the poly edit. Another area of the poly edit, so I'll just hit accept, that's like really useful, that you're going to use a lot, is once you go to poly edit on the left here, you're going to use these face edits a lot. And so for example, you might just extrude something, which is like extrudes it out, pulls it out more, just like that. A common one too is to just inset something like this. There you go, and then you get an inset. So you can either, from there, you can either just like pull it out, or you can just like start to extrude that. So a lot of models are created in this way, actually. Like the basics of a model, someone might actually just start doing a lot of insets, outsets, and extrudes just to get the basic shape of something going. And of course, you can then like rotate the face, and then you can like extrude that. And so let's say in this case, I'm extruding. Sorry about that. When I hit escape, it removed the edits. But when I click this, what I can do is, let's say I rotate that. I believe, see, this is a really important tool. So up at the top right here, you can change the gizmo transformation to be local or world based. So if it's local, it's going to give you essentially the normal to the face. But if it's like world based, it'll give you the world coordinates, which might not be normal necessarily. So now I can move it in this direction, or if I click this, I can move it in this direction. So you might need that, especially like if you're doing something like an extrude, and I want to extrude like in a particular direction. So for example, I could grab this face, and let's say I rotate it, and then I want to now extrude in the local. See, then I'll extrude out instead of, or I can like turn it back to world, and then I can extrude in this direction. I guess it'll always extrude normal to the face. So, but still, this is still useful if you just need to like translate stuff. I'll accept that. Let's take a look at some more of those. So I'll go back to poly edit, and I'll click this. So the other one that's really useful is the outset. So that'll like make something like larger like that, and then you can do something like extrude that if you need to get that kind of shape going. And of course, inset, and then maybe I want to pull it out in that direction, and there we go, and hit accept. So you can see you can start really modeling some really interesting shapes. So let's see. I don't really use poly deform that much. It's kind of odd. You just kind of drag stuff around. I find that poly edit seems to work okay with that. One thing very useful is so if we go to this box, what we can do is we can actually add edges to something. You know, let's take a look at a couple other poly edit things that are kind of useful. So like you can actually, let's like, for example, I'll just extrude this before we move on. I was probably moving too quickly, but like if I had extruded this out and I hit accept, we also have these two poly groups. I can click and like control shift click to select both, and I can merge them. See that? So now they're just merged together, so they're operating as one. I can also click something like this and I can decompose it into its original triangles, which might be useful depending on like what you want to do and what you want to edit on something. And yeah, those are most of the things I'm using. Decompose, merge, outset, inset, and extrude. And of course you can delete. You can try these yourself and see how they operate. And so another really useful one when you're just trying to like modify something is you can add custom edges. So you just need to select, you know, like 2 points on an edge, and then boom, it'll give you, you know, a new edge. You can also do a loop insert, which will actually you have to have kind of you should do this like at the beginning of a primitive when there's not a lot of modifications. I found that this doesn't work very well once there's like a lot of modifications to the primitive, but you can start adding in these like looped edges like this, which are essentially just subdividing, you know, the model manually. And so of course that just gives you a lot more stuff to play with. Now I can like literally I can model, you know, I can start modifying this stuff individually. So as you can see, I can add like a lot more detail, and a lot of modeling is like this. It's just a matter of, you know, getting a mesh like this and just literally modifying, you know, the individual vertices. See right there, that was like really helpful when modifying a point, just being able to switch this gizmo, because look at that crazy orientation that point has. There's like no way I could work with that. But once I go to the world mode, now I'm able to actually like work with it and do things with it. So yeah, vertices don't rotate really. And so yeah, so that's loop inserts and edge inserts. So let's see. So let's create a new thing here. So this is the main thing I'll use in triangles. Of course, you can hit try edit and you can like physically edit the individual triangles on something. But that's not that useful. That's what polygroups are generally for. And of course, you can do a lot of the same edits that you can do, you know, with a polygroup. But the main thing in this section that's really useful is this edit mats. So this allows you to define different material IDs to different parts of the static mesh. So if you go to edit mats or edit materials, the way I use this quite often is if I want this top to be like glass or something and then the rest of it to be plastic, what I'll do is I'll highlight the top like that. Then what I'll do is I'll hit this plus by material, so that gives me a new material group. Then I'll make it, I'll say, okay, I want to select one as the material, so now I've selected this. And then what I'll do, since I've already selected these two faces here, I can just hit assign selected material and then hit accept, and now boom, if we click on this, we can see we have two different materials. So we can have like one material to this. Of course it's gonna like compile, I don't even know what I just selected, but there you go, you can see that has one material, and then I can actually give this like a completely different material. Not a good example, but, you know, as you can see, so now I have two different areas of it with two different materials. You don't have to do that for like every single piece, or that you want to have like a different look, like, or a different texture on. different materials are things like if you want a piece of it to be like glass, or a piece of it to be plastic, or another piece to be like metal, you know, and to have like literally a different physical based rendering method applied to it. So, but still, it's very useful being able to assign materials like this. So through this triangles edit mats mode, and that's mostly how I use edit mats. Is just what I showed you. So I'll delete that. So another really, so we'll make like a little bit more of a complex thing here so you can get the idea of this. One sec. So we'll start modeling this out. Probably not the best thing, but I think it'll get the point across. So as you can see, our textures is they're kind of like warped and not perfect. And so the thing is you need to be able to do what's called like, you know, UV mapping on these models that you create so that the materials and textures like apply properly to them. So how do we fix that? How do we get it so it doesn't look bad and that everything's nice? So what we can do is we can click it, and then we have this really great tab called UV normals, or UVs/normals. So usually the way I start with that is the first thing I'll do is I'll just do a UV projection like this, and that kind of gets rid of all the like the waviness. And of course, it depends on what kind of thing you're projecting, but what it's doing here is I actually have it selected as cube. So since this is roughly a cube shape, it's using cube projection to kind of automatically fix. And so usually that's just what I use. There's cylindrical, of course, but this isn't really a cylindrical object type. So cube will work really well for this, a cube projection. So I'll just hit accept. And then the next thing I'll do is I'll go to UV layout, and I'll just just keep the defaults, you know, repack with a texture resolution. So what it's doing is it's literally creating your UV maps here. You know, as you can see, it's packing all these faces here properly, you know, into the UV coordinate system here. And so that's pretty much all I'll usually do. Of course, you can adjust the UV scale factor once at this point in case you want like a little bit more, if you want your textures to be like more compressed or not. But yeah, generally this is pretty good, just leaving it at 1, and you can adjust your texture resolution here as well if you want it to be higher res. Yeah, and you can just hit accept, and as you can see, after we ran UV projection and we repacked with UV layout, you know, we have like a pretty reasonable UV mapping on this object. So yeah, and so the key with this modeling is you really have to kind of experiment, and you really have to think about how you can kind of combine and apply all these things I showed you to make the shapes that you want to make. And I can tell you that, like, you know, 90% of like all shapes can be made with just the tools that I showed you. You just have to be clever and creative about how you combine them. You have to look at a shape or think about a shape you want to make and try to think about, you know, what tools do I want to create that shape? Like, what's the general gist of the shape, right? Like, is it just like a, you know, is it roughly a spherical shape? Great, then I'll start from a sphere. Is it roughly a box shape? Do I need a little bit more of a complex, you know, profile to start from? Then I might choose like a polygon. If it's a wall, I might choose a polypath. Is it cylindrical? I might choose a polyrevolve. Then I'll start thinking about like, okay, how are the shapes combined, right? And so maybe I need to do some Boolean meshes to get the shapes that I want. And then a lot of it can be done through poly edit and then inserting edges and just translating, rotating, and moving those around. So again, triangles for editing the materials, and then UV maps for getting correct UV mapping on your models. So that's pretty much it for the for this modeling mode. I think from here you guys should be able to create you know, I mean, look how quickly I created this just like random kind of complex shape. Like, you know, that wasn't very hard to do. I was just using a lot of those tools that I just showed you. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope this is very useful to you.